We have about another 5 minutes before we get started, but for those of you who have already joined us, thank you. And hello and welcome to our Aging Well workshop, hosted by North Dakota State University Extension and South Dakota State University Extension. My name is Dr. Jane Strommen, and I am the NDSU Extension Gerontology Specialist, and I'm located here on the Fargo campus. So we are using the Zoom platform today, so all of the attendees' microphones and cameras are off. So we just want you to sit back and enjoy the event, and make sure you ask questions at any time during the event using the question and answer button. We'll address all of the questions at the end of our webinar. So using your chat button, we just ask you to invite you to type in where you are today, where you're signing in from, or simply to say hi, or whatever else you'd like to add, or tell us, since this is about our homes, tell us what your home might mean to you. That would be interesting for us to see. So if you don't see these buttons, just hover over the bottom of your screen, or if you're using a tablet or a smartphone, you have to tap the screen. So also let us know if you've just joined us, if you're having any technology issues, please type those into chat. My colleague Leacey Brown with SDSU Extension is behind the scenes and can help troubleshoot. So for those of you joining as a watch party host, we're glad to have you. Please write down any questions that you might have and give them to your host. And this person will send them to our speakers so that we can answer them. So if you're just joining, again, my name is Jane Strommen with NDSU Extension, and I'm located on the NDSU campus, and we're going to be starting in just a few minutes. Welcome all. If you're just joining us, we're going to be starting in just a couple minutes, but we're inviting attendees just to type in the chat where you're at today, where you're located, or just to say hi, or tell us what your home means to you, since we're talking about homes today. And then we'll be starting in just a couple minutes.
Jane, do you see the comments in chat? What home means?
Means safety and home, and safety and family. Yes. Important things. Home means safe, relaxing, friendly, comfortable, peaceful. Yes. Oh, hello, Christy. Nice to know that you're on. It's making me smile. Home, we're home till we die. Why I want to learn how to stay there. Yeah, thanks, Lori. Yeah, you're not alone. Most people want to stay in their own home. Well, thank you for joining us today. And it is the top of the hour, 10 o'clock where I'm at, and I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to our Aging Well webinar series, How to Stay in Your Home Longer. And we'll get started. I'm going to introduce the speakers, and I'm going to start with Leacey Brown. Leacey is a gerontologist. She's advocating for broader discussions about aging and older adults in South Dakota. She currently serves as the SDSU Extension Gerontology Field Specialist. The troubleshooting skills she gained as a member of the U.S. Air Force has really enhanced her capacity and has allowed her to break age-related issues into more manageable parts. And these parts allow and ease into meaningful understanding. She is convinced that many of the challenges that we face as we age could be addressed through innovations in home, technology, and community design. Leacey's professional interests include aging well, aging in the home and community, family caregiving, fall prevention, ageism, and care and end-of-life planning. And I will also be one of your presenters today, and I serve as the NDSU Extension Gerontology Specialist. And like Leacey, my role is helping North Dakotans age well through science-based education. My professional background includes a variety of roles, including being a long-term care administrator of skilled nursing care, basic care, assisted living, and senior living housing, and the director of a small community-based nonprofit serving older adults and their family members in a rural county. For the past 12 years, I have been with NDSU Extension, and I see a number of evidence-based programs that are health promotion programs for older adults and their family caregivers. I also oversee a grant-funded project called Aging in Community that is aimed at helping rural communities have more resources available to help their older residents. And then last but not least, aging well and being able to age in place, especially in our rural areas, is a very passionate interest of mine. So let's get into today's discussion. I have been working with Leacey, the two of us, for the probably 5+ years on collaborative projects that benefit both North Dakota and South Dakota. In addition, we have been working with Dr. Susan Ray Diggs. She's a professor and interior design program coordinator at NDSU, and she has joined in our work around age-friendly homes. And two major projects that we have collaborated on with her are the Dakota Aging in Place study. That's a housing study that took place in South Dakota and North Dakota to explore consumer knowledge, motivation, and barriers to the implementation of accessible and universal design homes. The second project that we're involved in is called Voices for Home Modification of the Dakotas. And it was really a result of the findings of this study. And we're going to share more about this later in the presentation. So let's take a look at what we're going to be covering today. The main purpose of this webinar is to really help you understand what you need to know to stay in your home longer, safely, independently, and comfortably as you age. We're going to cover several topics, such as the structural features of a home that make it easier for you to stay there. We'll talk about home modifications and how they can help you age in place. And then last, the strategies to pay for these modifications. So to start with, what exactly does aging in place mean? Aging in place is really defined as the ability to live in one's own home and community safely, independently, and comfortable, regardless of things like age, income, or ability level. Many older adults define this phrase as growing older in a place where they feel a sense of connection, familiarity, and security. According to AARP, almost 90% of people age 65 and over want to remain in the home for as long as possible. But there are factors that make aging in place more difficult, such as chronic illness, um, having an accident, terminal illness, illness and recovery of any kind, and then the frailty that just comes with aging. All of these events can create either short-term or long-term disabilities, and accessibility in the home can become a major barrier when we're faced with these factors. So let's take a closer look at what is really needed to be able to age in place. Before you begin to make a decision about aging in place, it's important to evaluate your health, the safety of your home, and the resources in your community. And here are some factors to consider. What is your access to services and supports? This is especially important as you age or develop some health problems. What is the access to transportation in your community? And this, again, very important should you have to stop driving. What's the availability of a family caregiver? Do they live nearby? And this is, again, especially important if you live alone. And then have you planned ahead? Have you thought about the future in terms of where do you want to live as you get older? If you need care, how and where do you want to receive that type of care? And then finally, do you have the finances to cover your future plans? The design of the community is important to age in place. What are their features? Is it safe? Can you get around? Are there parks and recreational areas? Are there sidewalks for walking? All of those features of a community are important. And last but not least is the design of the home. So that's what this presentation is focusing on, is how the design of your home can mitigate some of those challenges associated with those facts of life. So I'd like to just share an example with you about how the design of your home can really help or hinder your ability to age in place. And a very common example, just my years of working with older adults, it's very common for somebody to be in their home and then needs maybe the use of a walker. And just an example of a woman living in her home. She's now using a walker, and she finds that she can't get through the doorway of her bathroom with the walker. It's not wide enough to accommodate. So she needs to leave it outside of the bathroom doorway. And then she needs to walk in an unsteady fashion to be able to use the bathroom. And often our older homes too have a step-in bathtub, and if you're using a walker and have mobility problems, it could prevent you from being able to take a bath or a shower. So just think about that situation where it becomes difficult for you to take a bath or shower in your own home. So those are very common in a home. So it's really apparent that the appropriate home design and the modifications can facilitate aging in place successfully. So there are so many benefits of having an accessible home, such as it reduces the risk of injuries from falls or other mishaps. It reduces the risks of injury to family members and professional caregivers as well. It may improve health and wellness outcomes. For example, being able to prepare delicious meals in a kitchen is accessible promotes your health. It may reduce risk of isolation because the home allows people with disabilities to enter and exit the home independently. And then lastly, reduce risk of relocation to a more expensive housing situation or even an institutional setting. So let's take a look at what the data says about the availability of accessible homes in the United States. So I've been using that term accessibility, and I just want to stop and provide a simple definition of that. Accessibility refers to creating space or housing that's designed to meet the needs of people with disabilities. So this graphic on the slide provides information about the availability of specific features needed for accessibility. And according to this housing study in the US, among the households surveyed, only 5% had a ramp, 54% had a step-free entry, or 52% had only one floor, 79% had a full bathroom on the first floor, 74% had a bedroom on the first floor. And among the households who would benefit from a full bathroom and bedroom on the entry level, 40% did not have both features. So the findings of this study really don't paint the full picture. For example, it doesn't tell us if the areas are sized and spaced for a wheelchair user or caregiver for the caregiving needed. We don't know if the rooms like the kitchen and laundry room would allow the occupant to actually perform those tasks like preparing meals or washing clothes. And it doesn't really tell us if the homes would be a good candidate for accessibility renovations. So let's take a closer look at accessible housing. The graphics on this screen show that 39% of households have at least one person, age 65 and older, a person or persons with a disability, or both. Research suggests that 19% of US households have an individual with a mobility-related disability. And about 1 in 8 households have a member who uses a mobility device for a long-term condition. So, is your home accessible? Here are 6 questions on the screen around home accessibility. And I would just encourage you, if you have a piece of paper, take that out, but read through each question and answer them either yes or no, whether you have those features in your home. And we'll just invite you to share maybe how many questions you were able to answer yes to in the chat. And it would be a fun thing to see. So we'll just take a few minutes, but I'll read through them too. The first one is, does your home have at least one no-step entrance? Second question, does the main floor have extra wide hallways, meaning a minimum of 48 inches, and doors a minimum of 36 inches wide? Does the main floor have lever-style handles on doors and faucets? Number 4, does the main floor have a bathroom shower that has no barrier and can fit a wheelchair? Number 5, can the main floor electrical controls and outlets be reached from a seated position? And the last, does the main floor have a bedroom or a room that can be used for sleeping? So we're seeing from 1 to 6 of 6 for 1, all 6. That is great. We got somebody who says 2, 5, 5 out of 6, 3, couple 4s, another 4. Yeah. Lacey's asking if you had 5 or more, did you build your own home? So we've kind of gotten that 3, 4, 5, possibly 6, a patio home, yes. But another 1. Well, thank you for sharing those responses. I think it's just good for us to think about this from an accessibility standpoint. And like an example, what would happen if somebody in your life becomes a wheelchair user? And so let's talk about making your home a better fit for you. So we're going to talk about home modifications next. Home modifications, just to provide some context to it, are really renovations or changes that are made in the home to meet the needs of people with disabilities. And some changes are quite simple. They're very low cost. They're easy. Other home improvements are more expensive and they require people with special skills and tools to be able to do that. So as you see on this screen, some examples would be building a ramp, putting grab bars in the bathroom, doing a complete bathroom remodel. Other things could include changes like moving the sleeping area to the main level, or as simple as reorganizing your storage so it's easier to get to the items that you need on a daily basis. So now I'm going to hand it off to Leacey to talk about adaptable homes.
Thanks, Jane. I appreciate you providing all of that background information. Definitely, those of you who answered more, feel free to go ahead and type in chat like why you picked it, because why you built it or you picked it, because I think the stories are really telling. So let me go ahead and transition us forward. As Jane said, we are going to talk a lot about home modification today. What we know from the work that we have done in our research and our outreach with people in South Dakota and North Dakota is that houses that have the features in that little 6-question survey are pretty hard to find. But even these features I have listed here on the screen, which don't go to wheelchair accessibility per se, can be difficult to find. When it comes to remaining in your home longer, one of the most important things to do is to live in a home that can be more reasonably renovated for accessibility, especially wheelchair accessibility. You kind of have to have that thought in your mind. What happens if someone in my family ever needs to use a wheelchair. So the 4 items I have listed on the screen in the orange boxes are kind of the key structural features in a home that can be the most costly and the most difficult to renovate when we're talking about accessibility renovations. So if you have to add an addition to add a main floor bedroom or to add a main floor bathroom, that can be very expensive and it can be out of reach for many people, especially by the time they realize that home modifications for disabilities really are a priority and they need to be done. Many people, unfortunately, they don't think about this topic until they're 70, 80 years old. They've been retired for a while and they no longer have the financial means to make these changes. So, like I said, these things I have listed on the screen really get down to what is the most difficult part of doing a accessibility renovation. An example of how much these features can cost, because I think I would be remiss in not acknowledging the cost of some of these adaptations. And I'm going to talk to you later in this slide deck about strategies that you can use to try to minimize some of these costs, but it's important to know that it's expensive. So that entrance, that no-step entrance, part of the work that we do is going to home shows to really talk to people who are building right now. Because our takeaway message is if you're building right now, including these 4 features you have on the screen, really can help reduce cost. So I was told in Sioux Falls, one reason they did not put the no-step entrance on their home when they built it is it would have added $30,000 to the cost of the unit. That's a real cost. That no-step entrance is a real cost. But as I said, I'll talk about strategies to reduce the cost of that no-step entrance. So the key takeaway message here is these 4 features are honestly the most costly to renovate for accessibility. But I want you to notice that bonus feature up there in the top corner. So let me name the features and then I'll talk about the bonus feature. The 4 key features you really need to have in your home in order for it to be a more appropriate home to renovate for accessibility are wide halls and doors, a bedroom on the entry level or a room that could be used for sleeping, an entrance that is either on grade or can be adapted to grade with a ramp, and the final feature is a bathroom that is sized and spaced for a wheelchair user. And now I want to point that bonus feature out to you, the 42-inch wide stairs. A lot of people have the idea that for a home to be appropriate for somebody who uses a wheelchair, it's got to be all on grade. That's not true. The answer in that situation is to incorporate wider stairs. So we recommend 42-inch wide stairs because then you can add a stair lift or a stair glider later to that stairway so that you have access to the upper level. So again, these are the structural features that are the most difficult part of any accessibility renovations. And I want to talk about the benefits that these features pose beyond physical disabilities where a person needs to use a wheelchair. These benefits extend to emergency medical service providers. They extend to family caregivers. They extend to paid caregivers that you might hire through home health or home care. By ensuring that you have the space in key areas of the home, you are setting it up so that it can be a place of care, whether it's emergency care or that care that's associated with the facts of life that Jane highlighted earlier. And I want to highlight the primary goal of adaptability. The primary goal is to ensure that there is access to essential features through either an on-grade entrance or an entrance that you can adapt to grade using a ramp. Often when I talk about this, the laundry room is what gets brought up. They're like, yeah, I made sure the laundry room was on the main level. But in my professional opinion, if you're looking at 2 houses, all things being equal, And one has the laundry room on the main level and a smaller bathroom, and the other has the laundry room in the basement and a larger bathroom, I'm going to tell you to pick the unit with the larger bathroom. Because honestly, being able to use the bathrooms facilities, the commode, the shower is much more important than being able to do laundry, especially in those short-term recovery situations. We've got to stop thinking about disability as an endpoint that once you end up with a disability, you're done, you have a disability for the rest of your life. With aging, that's not necessarily how it works. You kind of go through phases in your life where you have more disabilities or you have less disabilities. So if you need temporary recovery, you want to have a bathroom that is sized and spaced for you to use crutches or a walker or a wheelchair if the situation arises. So adaptability is about those essential features. The essential features are getting into the home, having a place to sleep, and having a bathroom where you can shower and use the commode. I want to point out these pictures on this slide. This is a house in Sioux Falls that was built with the features of adaptability from the beginning. On the left, you see that sidewalk. That is the ramp that leads into the back entrance of the home. The owner of this home has allowed me to use these photos, and I saw her recently, and she just commented about the overarching value that this no step has given her family. It just makes it easier to move things from her car into her home. She has a young family engaged in a lot of different sports and activities. There's travel, and she just really raves about how much easier this ramp really makes it for her and her family. So before I move on to talk to you about the details of each of these different sections of adaptability, I want to touch on the entrances, the doors. John, one of our tech supports behind the scene, he will drop a link in chat that takes you to the full web series about these materials. I do highly recommend that you read those articles. They go into much more details. This is kind of the Reader's Digest, very high level, what's the big picture? And that website will provide a lot of additional details to think about if you are thinking about, how can I renovate my home to be adaptable, find a home to be adaptable, build a home to be adaptable, whatever your situation might be. But before I move into the details, I want to talk a little bit about doors, halls, and thresholds. I understand that putting a ramp on a unit from the beginning, that may not just be practical. That just may not. You may not want to do a poured concrete ramp the way that our colleague in Sioux Falls did. But there's some things that you can do to plan ahead for when a ramp does need to be added. And one way to think about that is thresholds. So thresholds is that space between one room and the next in a home or from the porch deck of a home into the home. You really want to pay attention to those thresholds and how high they are. So it really needs to be less than a quarter inch. Flush is ideal, but that just makes it easier when you're moving from the home. It's not a renovation you have to do later if somebody develops trouble with their gait and they're no longer able to lift their feet up as much. So you really do want to think about those thresholds between the rooms in your home, because those really, a lot of them may be a half inch right now, and that doesn't seem like a big deal. But if somebody's dealing with frailty, it can be a big deal. They can cause tripping hazards, and those are a good thing to pre-plan and minimize as much as possible. And I definitely want you to pay particular attention to any entrances, especially from decks or patios or porches. So if you put a deck on your home, it's really helpful to make sure that it's flush between the deck and the home, because then when you need to add a ramp, you don't have to redo the deck to get the deck flush with the door. It's already done. So I saw some comments here in chat. I'm going to be look real quick and see if there's anything. So Jake says he saw the cost of the no-step entrance, and that's a genuine barrier. So that gives us a good transition to move on to talking about the entrance, because arguably the entrance is one of the most challenging things that we face when we are trying to make our home adaptable. There's a lot of different factors that really affect whether or not your home can be made no step or not. Some of those factors are simply the cost. There are extra costs associated with making a house no step. And that's really affected by the topography of the land. How rocky is it? How hilly is it? Is there special dirt work, landscape architecture type work that needs to be done to ensure that water flows away from the home? Because that is a risk when you construct a step unit, is the risk of flooding. So it takes a little bit of extra work to make a unit no step, depending, like I said, on the topography of the land, the way the water drains. So what you can do to make a entrance to your home adaptable to grade with a ramp, especially if you're building new. Again, if you're dealing with existing construction, you may not be able to do this, which brings me to a comment I wanted to make about adaptability and existing construction. I highlighted those essential features, that bedroom and that bathroom on the entry level. Wide doors are definitely preferred in homes. I would like to see wide doors as just one of those things that are available in our housing because they just make so much sense from so many different perspectives. But if you're dealing with existing construction, widening all the doors in a home simply is not practical. So you pick the doors that make the most sense to widen, and that would be the bathroom door. That bathroom is the most important room in the house. That is the room that really can lead to somebody not being able to remain there for as long as possible. So I'm sorry I didn't say that when I was talking about that, but I really felt like it's important to emphasize the importance of the wide door on the bathroom if you can only modify one door in an existing unit. So how do we make this entrance adaptable to a ramp? So first, you minimize that rise above grade. When you are dealing with a ramp, for every inch that the threshold of the door is above the ground, you need 1 foot of ramp. So if you're dealing with 40 inches above the ground, then you need 40 foot of ramp plus landings. So that's a lot of materials and supplies. So you need to minimize that rise as much as you can. You need to ensure that there's space for the ramp. The higher the rise above grade, the more area you're going to need for that ramp. In some situations where the rise is simply too high above grade, it might make more sense to plan for a lift. You know, there are exterior lifts that can be built on a concrete pad. You do have to pour the concrete pad, but you can pour a concrete pad and have an exterior lift put in your home, put in your garage, whatever makes sense for your family. So sometimes a ramp's just not possible because of the rise above grade. Another opportunity times when the rise, thank you. I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. Split levels. Those are another time when it's difficult to do that rise, that ramp, because you have the split foyer where you either go up or you go down. Focus on one entrance that gives you access to those essential features. So that would be your bathroom and that bedroom, and then plan for that lift or elevator. So let me move us forward because I could talk about this all day long. Let me check my notes on this adaptable ramp to make sure I didn't miss anything. The other thing that is important to think about is coverage for that ramp. So you want some sort of protection from the weather because people who have disabilities take longer to get into their home. So that is a challenge. John can post our testimonials in the chat, which we'll talk a little bit more about how important it is for caregivers to have that covered entrance. Last thing I'll touch on very briefly before I move on to details about the bathroom is resistance to ramps is a huge problem. There are so many people who refuse to put a ramp in. So they ultimately end up having complications. So that's a huge problem that we're not going to dig into. So let's focus on the bathroom. I've got to pick up my pace a little bit, so I do apologize for going a little bit long on those first two slides. But the thing is, when you're thinking about a bathroom is a place where stuff happens. You need to be able to turn around in the bathroom. You need to have places to put grab bars, and your shower and your tub need to be laid out in a way that a person could get from the commode to their chair, from their chair to the shower. So let's go to the options for clear space. So how do you know if you walk into an existing home, how can you figure out if that bathroom can be renovated for accessibility? So the first thing to look for is the clear space. So options for clear space are a 5-foot circle or this T-shaped. These diagrams that I'm showing you, there is a whole article that is devoted to the bathroom. So I recommend reading that if you want some ideas. So if you're not sure if you're a visual person and you're trying to figure out, you can take a tape measure in and just measure around and see if you could have space for a wheelchair to turn around. Because ultimately that's what we're aiming for in the bathroom is you want space where a wheelchair user can turn around. And you can't always get that 5-foot circle on the left, but you might be able to get that T shape there on the right. Okay, blocking is a must-have. All blocking is additional lumber in key areas of the bathroom. We have this diagram here on the SDSU Extension website, and you want blocking around your commode, your shower, your tub, and this really simplifies that process of adding grab bars. Instead of having to rip out drywall, put additional lumber in, and then reattach the drywall when you need grab bars, you're able to install them. I do recommend working with a health professional so you ensure the grab bars are installed at a correct height. Another thing to think about when it comes to grab bar blocking is it doesn't hurt to put blocking on your stairs where you might need handrails. Because again, then you have that additional lumber to support the weight of handrails in your wall. And the thing to remember, grab bars and handrails, they need to be able to support the weight of a human who falls. You can't just put them into the drywall with drywall wall screws. They can't hold the weight of people. You have to have the blocking. All right. So talking about the shower and tub layout. So we have several different examples of how this might look. It really helps to work with a contractor who understands where you should put the plumbing when it comes to accessibility and transfer. Because you need a person who uses a wheelchair, they need to have enough space to approach the commode and approach the shower as well as transfer from their chair. So there's some examples of how it might look on our website. I really do encourage you. You can check those links out. They have examples so you can see what it looks like in action. I did buzz through the kind of parts of adaptability a little quick, but I assure you there is in-depth information. I encourage you to check it out because it goes into the details. I mean, the adaptability really is about having the bones so that when you want to make a house accessible, you have the bones and you're not having to make significant structural renovations because those significant structural renovations are what can become the most costly. And I know it does sound like we're talking about new builds, but adaptability can help you look at an existing home and understand, could it be renovated for accessibility? So there are some things I want to remind you of. I want to bring some things together for you. So home modifications, Jane said this earlier, they have benefits, and I'm going to say it again. Home modifications can really improve functional performance. If someone's having trouble bathing themselves, implementing home modifications can return their ability to bathe themselves. And as you saw from those diagrams I showed you, the brief diagrams I showed you, or if you're looking at the web pages while I'm talking, it's mostly about having space in those key areas. Home modifications help reduce the risk of falls, as well as reducing that demand on caregivers. When I was in graduate school, I worked at a group home for people with developmental disabilities. And one of our residents was an older gentleman. He was 80, and he needed help in the bathroom. But most of the time it was okay. It was just basic stuff, helping zip up his pants and that kind of stuff. But when he got sick, he needed a lot more help, and it was a lot more stressful. And really, I needed to be able to transfer him. I needed to be able to transfer him. But this bathroom in this home was so tiny that basically when you sat on the commode, your knees were just a few inches from the cabinet in the bathroom. So really trying to care for somebody in that small bathroom, it increases the risk that I'm going to get injured. It's going to make it harder for me. So home modifications, a lot of folks have safety concerns. Home modifications really can't address those safety concerns. Home modifications truly need to be customized to the individual. I'm going to touch on the next bullet a little bit, but a healthcare professional, like an occupational therapist, somebody who's really an expert on helping humans move and do things, can figure out the modifications that are best for your home. And then a trained professional is just a great idea to try to find somebody who is familiar with accessibility renovations. You can look on some of the materials I'm going to share later will tell you some of those certifications that that professionals might have in the community. Home modifications don't always have to be structural. So on the right-hand side of the screen, I have an image of an expandable offset door hinge that can be used to make narrow doors wider. So sometimes there are solutions to these problems that are not structural. It can also be technology. In that 6 questions that Jane had on the screen, it asks about, where electrical controls are. The truth is we can solve a lot of that with assistive technology. And then adaptive equipment and technology really are part of the home modification process. There are tools to help us overcome some of the structural barriers that are in housing. So I gotta look at time. The one thing I want to offer very quickly is that this is a wealth preservation strategy for families. When it comes to estate planning, we often talk about the legal paperwork, to ensure that, our estate it goes where we want. This is another strategy. By staying in the home, investing money into the home, that helps you preserve your wealth and you're not having to pay for higher levels of care. So these slides will be emailed to you. John is going to put the link to this home modification planning guide in the chat. It is available on the SDSU Extension website. This is a free download. This really is to help you think about whether or not a home that you're looking at could be renovated for accessibility. It's just got some yes or no questions. It really emphasizes those activities that you need to do: getting into the home, being able to bathe, being able to sleep, moving from room to room, using appliances and different things in the home. So free guide, I definitely encourage you to download it. The next guide I want to tell you about is the AARP Home Fit. A good way to think about the adaptable home is the bones. This AARP Home Fit provides the skin that you can put on the bones. It is full of ideas and strategies that you can use to make your home work better for you. So an example could be if you have a front load washer and dryer, it may be worth it to purchase those pedestals so it is lifted up and you don't have to lean down so far to get the laundry out of your washer and dryer. So let's talk about the barriers. The barriers are serious. I'm sure many of you are here today because you know that accessibility renovations are something that need to happen in your life and some of the life of somebody you know, the cost is a barrier. It is very costly to renovate your home for accessibility, especially given that so many homes were not constructed to be renovated for accessibility, so it drives the cost up more. You know, and a lot of people are living on fixed incomes by the time they realize that they need to make these changes. There are not a lot of professionals, contractors who are trained to do accessibility renovations. So there are some certifications that you can find out about and learn about. Those are on the extension website in that home modification planning guide, on our funding guide, but there is more information about those providers. And that the availability of providers is complicated by living in a rural area. There's not very many providers in like urban centers like Rapid and Sioux Falls and Bismarck and Fargo Moorhead. You know, so if those areas struggle to have the providers, then we know that the rural areas do as well. There's also social economic status. Many people who need to have these renovations are living on a fixed income. Some of these individuals may have lived with lifelong disabilities, therefore they never had the capacity to earn as great as an income. So that social economic status, and people with a higher social economic status, they tend to have the wide halls already. They tend to have the bigger bathroom already. It's the rest of us who are living in homes that really need those major renovations. There's consumer perceptions. There are perceptions that accessibility is ugly and that it's nobody wants that in their home. And the truth is, it doesn't have to be. Accessibility truly is mostly about having space in your key areas, your bathroom, your entrances, your doorways, your halls. The rest of that you can make look any way you want. And then there's the architectural barriers. There are some homes that simply cannot be renovated for accessibility, such as a split foyer. Payment sources. You know, I am really trying to engage younger people in this conversation. As you can see from everything that I've told you, the home modification is a multi-year process. This is something that people in my age group need to be starting and planning for, because you can't, it's so expensive and it takes so much time to make all the changes. So how do you pay for it? You use your personal savings and assets. That's one way to pay for it. And I know that's not what we want to hear, but if you compare it to the cost of other housing options, you may find the investment worth it. You may want to work with a financing or a banking professional. These are some different tools that are available through banks, and depending on your situation, they may work for you. You know, somebody without heirs may appreciate something like a reverse mortgage. That might be a good option for them. So it's really important to talk to a banking professional. I would also say talk to more than one banking professional, because some banks do offer administer programs offered by the federal government for low interest loans. So I would talk to multiple banking professionals about any way to finance. And then you can always talk to your insurance agent. I haven't heard of it yet in South Dakota or North Dakota, but you can always talk to whoever your insurance agent is and see, do I have any sort of coverage for home modification? It's just a question to ask. But here's the really important thing that I need to leave you with: how to find information about funding. I don't know that I gave John this link to put in chat, but this slide deck will be emailed to you. Homemods.org is a project of the University of Southern California. They have funding guides for every state. If you go to homemods.org, go to the National Directory, search for your state, you will have a funding guide. This 10-page guide lists all the I shouldn't say all, a good portion of the program. So there's programs, there's an assisted technology program, there's a Center for Independent Living program, there's veterans programs, there's rehabilitation service programs, there's the Medicaid programs, the USDA Office of Rural Development has programs, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has programs. But you'll need to go to your state website. If you go to the how to find and pay for home modification, I do have the state profiles linked for North Dakota and South Dakota. So if you go to how to find and pay for home modifications, you can find the state profiles there. I definitely encourage you to check that out, but let's talk about the North Dakota ADRL. So every state in the country has an aging and disability resource link. I will leave this on the screen for a second. You can contact them to find out information. So I'm going to read a statement to you. The North Dakota Aging and Disability Link, abbreviated as North Dakota ADRL, is run by the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services. You can contact them by phone for home modification resources. You can also check their online database to see if they have funding options beyond what is offered by the Department of Health and Human Services. When you search for the database, please use the term home improvement or accessibility to find the providers. You can contact them by phone, email, or by using the contact form on their website. The South Dakota information is on the screen. They also have a ADRL. It is called Dakota at Home here in South Dakota. And Dakota at Home is run by the South Dakota Department of Human Services. You can contact them by phone or check your eligibility for home modification funding. You can also check their online database to see if they list providers or funding options beyond what is offered by the Department of Health and Human Services. You can contact Dakota at Home by phone or email. The other option in South Dakota is the Helpline Center. Helpline Center's 211 program offers free resource navigation services for South Dakota residents. You can contact a trained specialist by phone, text, or email to learn more about nonprofit and government programs that provide or fund home modification. You can also search their online database and website. So if you are renting your home, reasonable accommodations and reasonable modifications for individuals with disability are expected by these federal legislation. I would urge you to contact your landlord to request home modifications. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jane. I'm sorry, Jane, for going over.
That was great, Leacey. That was just a wealth of information. And I know we have to do a broad overview and go through some of this quickly, but we're glad that we have so many resources that we're sharing with you so that you can look at it after this webinar is over. So Leacey and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the work that's happening in our two states around this topic of accessible housing. And you know, earlier I mentioned to you this project called Voices for Home Modification of the Dakotas. It was a project that started in 2021, and there was some funding received in 23 from the South Dakota Community Foundation to support some of the activities. And so housing is a complex issue, and it requires a lot of collaboration to really make some positive impacts. So I want to tell you a little bit more about what is happening with this project. The overall goal is really to increase knowledge and awareness about the role that home design plays in the quality of life for people with some mobility limitations. And, you know, just that great big wish in the future, the vision is that every home is constructed to enhance quality of life for all people. And so that is our big vision for the future. So we have a diverse group of stakeholders who are interested in this, and you saw that from contractors to government to nonprofits and professionals that are working with people in their homes. And so we really have had just the enthusiasm of a lot of people that know how important home design is. So let's look at some of the activities that have been happening with this particular project. We have been working on creating a toolkit, if you would, that includes a lot of different things, some video and written testimonials from people in North Dakota and South Dakota, kind of a funding guide and a list of providers. Where do you find people to do this? A social media campaign just to raise the level of awareness about this important topic. And so just for example, some of the things that we're doing with the testimonials, we have testimonials from EMS workers, those people going into the house when somebody has fallen and they can't get the stretcher in, home care providers, people with disabilities, and then from family caregivers themselves. And we're working on identifying those people who can provide these home modifications services and funders, we're encouraging them to be listed on these statewide databases that Leacey just talked about, whether it's the Dakota at Home or the North Dakota ADRL, so that it's easier for people to find them. So we're doing a lot of educational awareness, as Leacey mentioned, going to home shows and doing presentations for lots of different professional groups and consumers. So we're really hoping to we can bring some light to the subject, we can address the barriers and really make it easier for consumers to make those decisions about their home. So let's hear just a personal story of somebody from South Dakota that Leacey met about the challenges. It really energizes us when we hear those personal stories. This is a testimonial from a woman that Leacey met at the home show in Sioux Falls. And you can see she's just wanting to share her advice about renovating. They wanted to age in place, some arthritis or knee replacement issues going on, and advice, make sure your contractor is on board with what you want when building or renovating, and get somebody who understands that you're going to be living in that finished product. And great advice that you want it built for you, not for somebody else or for resale down the road. So what we're really hoping to do is really spark more conversations like this, and asking people to talk about it, share their personal stories on social media. You can see the hashtag here on this particular screen. Have those discussions with your family and friends about their homes, your homes, how easy it is to be able to stay there if that's what your wish is, and start doing some of those things earlier than later. Like Leacey said, if you wait until something has happened, you just might not be able to stay in your home. And then, lastly, is really talk to those community leaders and decision makers in your particular community. Let them know what your preferences are, that there's a need for more accessible housing so people can age in place. Both of our states have an aging population. Those baby boomers are aging, and there is a need for this type of housing. So in closing, let's just take a look at some of the things that we've talked about. Because so many of our homes aren't accessible, home modification is needed to be able to age in place. We've discussed home modification and how it really needs to be specific to the individual and unique needs of the occupant. We've also examined those key structural features of a home, as Leacey talked about, that really are important, and they can be big issues for home modification if we don't have those the bones of the home in place, as Leacey referred them to. And then we've also looked at the challenges of getting home modification, but we also have tried to provide some strategies and resources for you to be able to find people who can do this, and maybe find ways that you can pay for this type of modification as well. And we've told you about this project. If there's something you are interested in being involved in, this Voices for Home Modification, we encourage you to reach out to us. So that is what I think we wanted to leave you with. We have some more information on this slide if you're interested in learning more. I think most of these resources have been added into the chat box, but of course they'll be on the set of slides that you will receive. So with that, I think we have about 5 minutes left, and I'm just gonna thank you for your time and attention today, and for being part of our webinar. Just going to let you know logistics about when the handouts and the recording will be shared. Leacey's going to email the handouts and the recording link to everyone who is registered for this webinar. The PowerPoint will be sent immediately after the event. And Leacey's just asking, if you haven't received an email from her by April 4th, let her know, and she'll make sure that it gets to you. So with that, Leacey, I think that we've covered everything on our slides, and we could see if anyone has any questions. We would just encourage them right now, type them into the Q&A box. And I see that there is a question.
Jane, I'll
It
talk
said,
about it.
oh, okay, great.
So
You'll read
really,
it?
concrete, when it comes to using the concrete, you need to talk to your your contractor about, I don't know what the process is called, but you make it, you do the concrete in a way so it's more rough and not slick. I know exactly what your concern is about that slick concrete. My neighbor, she's an older woman who struggles getting around, and I do her snow. And she's got rugs tossed all over her concrete in her patio because it's slick. Like as soon as it gets wet, it's whoo slick. So you need to talk to your contractor and make sure they understand that they need to treat that concrete in a way so that it is non-skid. Okay, I know I saw presentations and or questions in the chat. Somebody asked about how to, if you are a provider and you want to get listed on the funding guide. I am going to pull up the website and show it while we are active so you can see it. It's kind of a long website, but it's got a lot of very useful information. If you go to the extension website, you can always find this guide. This information is included on the North Dakota website for NDSU extension. So you can always go find this information on NDSU extension as well. But I am taking you to the Voices for Home Modification Toolkit that was built on the SDSU extension website. And then we have a funding guide, and I'm going to take you to that funding guide. The funding guide summarizes everything that we talked about today with regard to funding. At the bottom of this page, you will find how do I get my organization or agency listed, and it's got the contact information. So go to that funding guide, and that will tell you how to get listed on that database. And that's one of our major project goals, I think, going forward, is just reminding anybody who funds these program or projects, anybody who has grants, the service providers, they can get listed so it's easier for consumers to find that information. Okay.
If anybody else has a question, we have a couple minutes. If you have a question, make sure you just type it in the Q&A box and we'll get to it.
I see all the positive words in chat box. Thank you. Jane and I really worked hard to try to make sure this was a useful presentation. I think many people who are here today understand that home modification for accessibility is a need, but what you're looking for is that how do we make this happen? So we really just tried to give you some information about how to make this happen. I will send you the handout. I'll go ahead and email that immediately so you can have those numbers right away. But the recording, as Jane said, give me till about April 4th. Give me my team time to get it processed because we're a small team, you know, so it takes us a little time. So can a
There is another.
multi-level home be adapted? So it depends on kind of a few things. So the answer really lies on where are the entrances located and where is the bathroom and the bedroom located compared to the entrance. What you would have to do, so I spoke to somebody up in Bismarck, and they had a house with a walkout basement, and but you couldn't get to that, you had to use stairs to get to that walkout basement. An option for them would be to put a pathway from the front of the house around to the back to that walkout basement. So the answer is it truly depends on your home. When it comes to making your home adaptable, the key is ensuring that you have essential features accessible through a no-step entrance or a ramped entrance or an entrance that can have an elevator put on it or a little lift. So there are outdoor lifts. If I remember correctly, I think it's an 8x8 pad, but that size of that concrete pad might vary depending on how big the unit is. So the answer to Active Generations East is it depends on your home and whether or not it can be renovated when it's multi-level. So Danielle, are there requirements for new builds to be adaptable, especially in rental units? There are no such requirements for new builds to be adaptable. That's one of our visions that we had when we created the adaptable home materials, is we needed to give rental property owners something simple that they could potentially take and plug into their existing floor plans. Granted, their existing floor plans still have to be adjusted to add the wider doors and wider halls and all that stuff. But the answer is no. There are no requirements for the doors to be 36 inches. I really wish doors would just be 36 inches at this point. I can't think of very many logical reasons to go for a smaller door in a residential setting. Same for Minnesota. I can't answer for Minnesota. So I can't answer for Minnesota. Because Minnesota is different than South Dakota, and some of those codes do vary by states. There have been some communities in the United States who have implemented what is called a visitability code. And the visibility code basically ensures that somebody who uses a wheelchair could come to the house. And the goals are very similar to kind of adaptability, but adaptability just focuses on 4 features. So yes, the renters do have the right to ask their landlord to make reasonable accommodations. You'll have to check with your community, but as a renter, you may be expected to pay for home modifications related to accessibility. So you'll have to check in your community, but you may be asked to pay. But that's where you start contacting the either Dakota at Home or the North Dakota ADRL, some of these different nonprofit and government agencies who do home modification and assisted technology to see if they might be able to help you. So let me look at the chat box. Okay, so James says, I have a small bathroom, plan to change the door so it does not open to the inside. That's a great point, James. Sometimes that's a good solution, is to rehang the door so it swings outside. Minor improvements, few more inches in the bathroom for a walker or wheelchair, and definitely pre-plan for grab bars. It will just make it so much easier in the end if the blocking for the grab bars is there to begin with. Tracy says, thank you for the in-depth resources, tips to modify. We are past the top of the hour. I do apologize. If you need to drop off, that's fine. I'm going to answer these questions that I see coming in. If you want to stay on and hear the rest of the questions, you may certainly do that. You will receive the recording though. So okay, so Danielle, please tell me more about asking in the community. I would assume you need to talk to your housing authority. So South Dakota has South Dakota Housing Authority. So I would try, if you have questions, I might ask South Dakota Housing Authority. If there's a similar agency in North Dakota, I would consider reaching out to them. You might want to check rural development, potentially, maybe they can answer, or HUD. Housing and Urban Development, South Dakota HUD and North Dakota HUD, you could reach out to them. Yes, Ida Marie, split foyers are tough. I understand why. It's been explained to me why split foyers are so common. I mean, the simple answer is they are cheaper to build than other units. Split foyers wouldn't be so bad if they were planned in a way are constructed in a way that single level living could be an option. Like if they made one level where you could get no step access and you could have that bathroom and you could have that bedroom, but oftentimes those split foyers are not constructed in a way. And then in addition, the stairs are so narrow on those split foyers, adding a stair glider isn't really a good option. So typically, an occupational therapist is going to be the one who can come in and suggest appropriate grab bar height. They can also suggest technology, assistive technology, or other solutions. A solution that comes from an occupational therapist could be like, well, we change how we do this task. We do this task differently than we used to. So that's kind of an occupational therapist is somebody who can really work with you. Nice to have. Ida Marie has an OT in the family.
Mhm.
Jane, is there anything you want to say before we shut down and end for the day?
No, I would just say that, housing is a big issue, and we're just hoping to provide a little bit of education here. And if after this webinar, if people have questions or they don't really know where to turn next, or if they want some more information, they certainly can reach out to us. Our contact information is on that slide set that everyone will get. So just encourage you to reach out if you want to learn more.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Mhm. Thanks for coming.